Welcome back, everyone. In the last video tutorial, we learned about electromagnetism, and we had a quick introduction to wireless networks, and we saw how wireless networks use electromagnetism. In this video tutorial, we want to make these wireless concepts a little bit more concrete. So we're going to show you how to configure an actual wireless network. And to do that, I'm going to bring up Packet Tracer. Now, this is a tool that you have installed on your school computer. We're going to be using it quite a bit when we return back to Milestone College. You're not required to use this tool right now, but if you really want to follow along and do exactly what I'm doing, you can just go to Packet Tracer, download in Google, and click on that first link, and you'll see you'll be able to download that. But before you can, Cisco requires you to enroll, create an account, and sign in. So like I said, you don't need to follow these steps yourself. I'm just trying to make these concepts a little bit more tangible. Now, what do we have inside Packet Tracer? Well, if I take a look, I have different types of Cisco routers. I have wireless devices, computers, and so on. Let's start by grabbing a wireless device. I'm going to grab this WRT 300 and click on it. And we have three tabs here: Physical, Configure, and GUI. Let's go to Physical. This is what the device looks like, and let's zoom in, and this should look familiar to you. This is exactly like the wireless access point you have at home. This is what you're using to connect to the internet. You can see the antennas here. That's how you connect with wireless. You can also plug computers in here, okay, to connect to this router as if it is a switch. You can also connect to the internet through this blue port. I call it an everything box because it has everything you need to create a small network at home. Let's go ahead and close this here, and we want to configure this for a wireless network. So let's get a pre-made wireless PC. Actually, before we do that, we'll get a generic PC, and we'll put it right beside the router. And before we can connect, we will need to set up a wire connection first, configure the router, and then we'll be able to connect to it using wireless. So the connections are located right here. If you look at this Thunderbolt, we have all kinds of wires we can connect. We have a cross-through, a straight-through, a crossover, fiber optic. We're going to learn about all this, so don't worry too much about that right now. I'm just going to grab a wire, plug it into the back of the computer, the Ethernet port, and now I'm going to go to my everything box, my home router, and I'm going to connect it to one of the switch ports, also Ethernet. So let's choose Ethernet 3. Okay, now take a look at this. This here has an IP address. I don't know if you can see it, but the router is 192.168.0.1, but the PC doesn't have an IP address yet. So that's the first thing we have to try and fix. Let's click on the computer, go to the desktop, okay, and this is just like the desktop of any computer. We will set up the IP configuration, and if you remember back from Module 1, your very first course, we could either manually enter an IP address or we can obtain it automatically through a server called DHCP. Well, this everything box, it's a wireless access point, it's a switch, it does everything we need, and it's also a DHCP server. So when I click DHCP, look what happens. We automatically got an IP address from the router. So our computer, our PC, can now participate on this network here because it has an IP address. I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and I'm going to connect to the router from the PC using a web browser. There is no Internet Explorer, there's no Google Chrome, but we do have this generic web browser here. So let's go ahead and click on that, and let's enter the address of the router. 192.168.0.1. We press enter, and the router is asking me to enter a username and password. So if you're following along at home, it's admin for the username and admin for the password. We click OK, and we'll just sort of zoom in a little bit, and we can see a lot of settings here that we're not really interested in for this wireless Toronto office project, but I might as well show you a bit of it. You can see here are the DHCP settings. Okay, it's currently enabled. Here are the range of IP addresses that are going to be handed out, but what we really care about is wireless security. So let's take a look at this. We'll click on wireless, and if I go to the network mode, these are the 802.11 standards, the B, the G, the N. The most recent standard, if you recall, is 802.11ac, and that's not in the list. So I'm just going to choose the most up-to-date one on that list right there, 802.11n, and select that. Now, I need to enter something called the service set ID, SID, or network name. That's a fancy thing, a fancy way of saying something you already know. It's the name of the network. So if I go to any wireless device, there should be a wireless icon. Okay, I see it here in my system tray. If I click on it, okay, I see D-Link E4E4. That's my wireless router that I'm currently connected to. And down here, I see all my other neighbors. That's what a SID is. Okay, in this case, my SID is D-Link E4E4. I'm going to enter a SID for this new network that I'm setting up. I'm going to call it My Network, and I am going to scroll down, and I have to click Save. So that's been saved now into the router. Okay, and under wireless, I have these sublinks. Let's go to wireless security now, and we need to configure the security mode. Currently, we have none. Okay, and this is something you have to do. Read about in your assignment, WEP or WEP, WPA, and WPA2. WEP is the first security mode that was released with wireless, and hackers were able to break through it literally, I think it was within a few weeks. So you need to check your devices at home and all the wireless devices you're using. If you have WEP set up, you have no wireless security. Anybody can grab the packets out of the air and access your wireless devices. WPA was released a short time later, and similarly, hackers were able to compromise it and get past WPA. The only thing that counts as security today in 2020 is WPA2. So I'm going to select that as my security mode, and I'm going to configure the rest of the security. Now, it's asking me to set up encryption. What is encryption? Encryption is scrambling the information. Now, keep in mind, this is wireless. It's flying through the air. Anyone can come along, pluck it out of the air, and if it's just unscrambled in its plain, ordinary, unsecure, unscrambled form, people will be able to read it. So what these two things do, these are algorithms for scrambling the data, and I'm going to choose AES because it's the stronger encryption. If you're using TK-IP at home or with any of your wireless devices, you are strongly advised to use AES instead, because that is the stronger encryption. So to summarize, the only security mode in 2020 is WPA2. If you're using one of these other ones, you need to replace it with WPA2 and use the strongest encryption, which is AES. Now it's prompting me for a passphrase or a password. So I'm going to make this really hard to guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Again, I need to scroll down and save the changes. And that's it. We have just set up some minimum wireless networking here. The only other thing I want to show you, you can see the SID, my network. The only other thing I would like to show you here are these channels. Sometimes you'll find you're having trouble getting a connection at home, or your wireless network is really slow. Look at the number here, 2.4 gigahertz. That's being used by all your neighbors. It's being used by the cordless phones, not the mobile phones, not the smartphones, but the cordless phones. 2.4 is very saturated, so sometimes we get too much interference and it slows down our network. What you can do if you have a slow wireless network at home is maybe just play around, choose a different channel, and you have to do this by experimentation, and maybe one of them is less utilized in your area. I'm going to choose the first channel here, the default one. Click Save, Continue, and we are now ready to put a wireless device in our network. We can locate these wireless devices here in the custom-made devices, and we can see here we have a generic wireless PC with a network card already installed. Let's click on the PC. I'm going to go to the desktop, and I'm going to click on the wireless software. But before I do that, I want to make this more dramatic. Let me put this down here under the router. Okay, you can see there's no connection right now. We'll go to the wireless software, go to connection. Now it takes a little bit of time to find that SID. There's my SID, my network, and we connect. It's WPA2 for security, and we enter our passphrase or our password, and we connect. And there you go. You can now see this wireless PC is connected to the router. So like I said, you don't need to do this at home. It's not really required. We're going to be using Packet Tracer when we return to the school. I just wanted to give you a demonstration of how to configure and set up a wireless network.